Welcome to That Super Show, the podcast where we talk about all things super from the inside. I'm Neil Benson, Chief Product Officer at Chandler CX.
And I'm Sarah Penn, CEO of Mayflower Consulting. Each week we unpack what's changing in the industry, what funds are wrestling with, and how tech and regulation are shaping the landscape.
Sometimes we bring in expert guests, but mostly it's just us having a real conversation about how super is working and what could make it even better.
Let's get into it.
G'day, Sarah. Hot on the heels on day one at the Future Fund Admin Forum 2026. Let's recap. Day two. It's all over. How was it for you?
Yes, it was excellent. I really enjoyed the conference, actually. Made lots of new friends. I really liked the focus on the member experience and what we're trying to deliver for members rather than just talking about the back end side of things.
I agree.
But that's because I'm a marketing woman at home.
If you look at the title and some of the sessions on the program, you would think it was a very technical conference with lots of operational issues. And there was some AML, CTF content in there, for example. But yeah, a lot of it just came around to the administration function really supports that member experience. So let's focus on the member.
Yep.
It really came through very strongly.
I think so too. So we started the day with Flow Wars servicing as a differentiator in the new competitive landscape. I think it needs that voice. Now, I missed most of this because I was chairing the next panel and I had to go and find my speakers. So tell me about it. What did they say?
We had Mary Payne. Mary is the Chief Product Officer at SS&C, a big technology provider and administration outsourcing provider as well. A couple of key takeaways from me was Mary shared a very personal story of her own father passing away. And even as somebody who's in the industry, understands all the jargon and the buzzwords, found it incredibly difficult and didn't have a great experience working with her father's superannuation fund. The language was very confusing. Going through the identity verification process was very challenging. If that's what it's like if you've got some expertise in the industry, can you imagine what it's like for the ordinary punter? So we still have a long way to go. Mary also reminded us that as well as our members, there are a lot of other classes of users in superannuation. And when we design business processes and portals and things like that, we ought to take into account the fact that there's members, but we also are serving their advisors, their delegates, their beneficiaries in some cases.
Yeah, spouses, kids.
In my case, parents. So I share the story of Mia, my 8-year-old, who's recently joined Care Super, and all her communications come to me. And they know she's 8 years old. But they still ask her to fill in a feedback satisfaction survey and ask her why her employer hasn't dumped her first SG contribution to the fund yet. Hilarious.
Why haven't you, Neil?
Well, we'll get round to it.
Does she empty the dishwasher?
That's right. Just clean up the chicken coop this weekend.
Yes, I've heard the same from other people in the industry. Actually, someone fairly high up in insurance who said to me she thought she was pretty good at knowing how all this stuff worked, and then a friend of hers' parent passed away. And she said, I'll help, I know how all this goes. She said it was quite the eye-opening experience of realising just how much you don't know and how hard it is.
Mary posed a gut-punching question at the end of her session, and Emma from Australian Super commented later, we always get compared to other industries, insurance and banking, and superannuation is different. But Mary posed the question, do we suppose that there's other industry forums going on right now with people trying to copy ideas from superannuation?
They might be trying to copy the SGC. That's pretty fun.
Yeah. How can you grow to $4.5 trillion? So that was a real thought-provoking question I thought that Mary posed at the end of our session. And then we had your death and disability claims panel right after.
Which was, I really enjoyed it. It's funny, I had a huge list of questions just in case, and we got through about a third of them, which was fun because it ended up being a really open discussion actually around especially what CBUS, the changes that they have made. So we had Kerry Vogel, who's the head of insurance delivery and performance at CBUS, Jocelyn Ferlin, who's the chair of ANZ Super and NED, and also was heavily involved, or ran, I think, the Super Complaints Tribunal for a long time. So she really knows her stuff. And then Alison Bodiner, who's just left Ascender as the head of group proposition and product. So it was a pretty power crew, actually.
You assembled a great team.
Yeah. So Kerry has agreed to come on the pod and talk in detail about all the changes that she's made. So we won't steal too much thunder, but they certainly have made some pretty significant changes, including actually changing the trust deed, which didn't get quite the gasp of surprise from the audience as it did from me personally, which I only heard on the day. Because
I saw
changing a trust deed is a big deal.
Jocelyn's eyebrows nearly leapt off her head. They've made some very bold changes. I thought it was great. CBOS has taken a battering in the media over the claims delays in 2023 and 24. That their chairman was up in front of the Senate, and there was all sorts of bad press at the time. So for Kerry to come out and share the story of how they've taken that on the chin, the changes they've made, the improvements to their service, it's really open, and I really appreciate their transparency in doing that.
Yeah, me too. Well, as I said, won't steal the thunder, but they've made significant changes. They've really done that thing that happens so infrequently, actually, which is gone back to first principles of what the hell are we trying to do here? What are we allowed to do legally? Not just what does everybody else do, but what can we actually do to get a better experience for our members and drive down costs of doing it at the same time, which I thought was really fantastic. It reminded me of one of the things that I've certainly seen over the years from a comms perspective, which is often communications are expected to somehow fix other things. And when people say, well, your send was 50 pages long and what is really hard to understand, and then they want you to fix it using better communication. But a lot of the time, it's not to put too fine a point on it. You're trying to put lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
And if the underlying machinery isn't any good or has just gotten more and more complicated over many years, which is generally what happens, then somehow expecting that communications will somehow magically fix it is just magical thinking. That's the word I'm looking for.
It's magical thinking. Wishful thinking, that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it was absolutely fascinating to hear. And it was, Jocelyn spoke a bit about systemic issues as well and how often they come up. Oh, actually, she also spoke about a recent annual member meeting that she was involved in, which I said I wouldn't repeat on here, but of course now I am, where things went badly awry and members couldn't get into the meeting, but they actually rang every single member that had registered for the meeting afterwards. And the feedback they got was people were so impressed that they were getting a phone call and that someone was actually taking the time to call them and make an effort, that actually those people are probably now more loyal to the fund than they ever were before.
That's right. Yeah, a simple, heartfelt apology.
Yeah, it really does make a difference. Again, the best written email in the world is nowhere near as good as someone getting on the blower and saying, hi, it's Sarah from XYZ Superfund and I'm really sorry that this happened, and did you have any questions?
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Chandler CX. It's annual statement time for superannuation funds, and we're busy developing interactive statements that are engaging, personalised microsites for members. Think of it like Spotify Wrapped for superannuation. If this is something you'd like to deliver to your members, visit chandler.com.au.
That's great. Next up.
That got us to morning tea.
It did, and I'm really excited that Kerry's going to come on. I'd made lots of notes about the improvements that CBOS has made and some really exciting developments there. But, like you said, let's not steal her thunder. Next, we had Duncan McPherson from Borromean Consulting. Duncan is an expert at running large-scale advice teams. I think he ran the advice team at Link.
Indeed, he did, yep.
Had a lot of experience looking at digital financial advice and telephone-based advice as well. Great session there. My key takeaway was, one, to really try and persist the data that members share with you during that advice journey. So I've been through quite a few recently, just experimenting or evaluating different funds' digital advice offerings. They know my age, they know my balance, but when I tell them whether or not I'm a homeowner, whether or not I have a partner, whether or not I have assets outside of super, I would love it if they could remember that. And so next time I do advice, or the next time they do a retirement income projection, they have a baseline to work with of data that I've already shared and volunteered to provide them. Far too many funds take that data into their digital advice system and then dump it, forget all about it.
Yeah, like if people are looking calculators and things, I don't even think it's taken in. I think it doesn't go on the server. What do they say? Stays client side.
Yeah.
Doesn't even get that far.
And then Duncan joined the panel that was next that Matt Jose from Mayflower moderated. I was joined on the panel with Tim Mitchell-Adams from Prime Super as well. We had a great old chat about digital financial advice. I didn't make any notes during this. I was on the stage.
No, I really enjoyed it. I voluntold Matt that he had to that he was going to be moderating a panel, but I thought he did very well. So shout out to you, Matt, for your first moderation gig. Yeah, I thought it was it was a really good discussion and just a good reminder that there is lots that can be done. There's still so much upside to be had.
I took a bit of a contrarian view, maybe compared to Tim and Duncan. I did evaluate the digital financial advice offering from 5 different funds, scored them out of 10. One got a 3 and the others got less than that. And I kind of reflected that I don't really know if I want my superannuation fund providing financial advice, because it has to be so limited in its scope. They're never going to recommend another fund. I wouldn't expect, if I went to my bank, that they would recommend a different home loan product from a different lender. So it would be great if I could get my data out of my superannuation fund and into, maybe a traditional personal finance tool like PocketSmith, which is happening the one that I use. I can connect my bank to it, and I can connect all the other providers, but I can't connect my super to it. And we've got OpenAI just recently launched personal finance ChatGPT. It's available in the US at the moment, and you can connect that to 12,000 different financial institutions there. That's going to arrive in Australia very soon, I'm sure. And we're still not going to be able to connect our superannuation account to it because the consumer data right, which is now available, open banking and utilities, it stopped short and was paused in 2023, and the government seems to have no interest in picking it up again. So we have a closed super system.
Yes, unfortunately, the CDR didn't do what everyone hoped it. By everyone, I mean the government didn't do what people hoped it would do, which is that the average man in the street would use all this amazing data that they now had access to compare between banks and between utilities and make better decisions and save tons of money, and everyone would have a lovely time. And because that is what's happened in other jurisdictions, that did not happen here, and so the whole thing sort of came to a screaming halt.
There have been some quiet successes, I think maybe we didn't all see. So, for example, when I went to extend my home loan for renovations, my bank just said, please give us permission to connect into your other financial institutions to check your level of borrowings or savings. Did that? Right, no problem. No, give us your username and password for another bank, which is what they used to do. Or print off an annual bank statement and send it to us. They were using open banking in order to be able to make that happen. And it was a very seamless experience. Similarly with my financial advisor recently. So there are instances like that. There's lots of new fintechs emerging that do make use of open banking to power their products. So it's not as rapid as we all hoped, but I think we're slowly adopting that service.
Well, the thing was, though, I think the plan was it wasn't that the banks were going to use it to deliver better stuff, because they already, it's making it slightly quicker and easier, but not making much difference.
Yeah.
The idea was that consumers were going to use it to do all these amazing things, and that hasn't happened. No. So from the government's perspective of who were they really helping here, it's a hell of a lot of legislation and change. But if it's not really making much difference to end consumers, then it's the whole thing of the why bother, especially when there's so much else on. I think with Shield First Guardian happening as well, anything to do with super advice, all the rest of it's just suddenly
parked
on the back burner.
Well, we did hear from Joshua Coote from Telstra Super about how they're using the CDR. I think it's mostly in pension payments, just to validate a bank account. So does this member own this bank account? And they're using the open banking protocol for that, just to do account verification. And then they're also using CDR for direct debit verification. So I think some of the problems with members wanted to make a one-time withdrawal, and it could be a substantial amount of money, 50 grand or something, to buy yourself
a new car because they crashed it because they were third in the row behind an Uber driver, not talking about anyone I know.
It can be pretty challenging to withdraw over BPay, big one-time lump sum money. So they wanted to look at a one-time direct debit, where the limits are typically much higher. And they used CDR to achieve that. And finally was the heartbreaking story of the challenges trying to use NPP and OSCO to make real-time payments on batch. So, if you've got a regular pension withdrawal that happens every 2 weeks and you get your $4,000 out of your Telstra Super pension account, then they wanted to use OSCO to make that a real-time payment. What we heard is OSCO is not really set up for business to consumer batch payments. So
no, it's very much one-to-one. Because it's the back end of Pay ID, isn't it?
That's right.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one-to-one. When you're suddenly doing one-to-many, it all got a bit more exciting.
Exciting is the word for it.
I have to say, though, it was one of those presentations where it didn't look that exciting. There weren't sort of new big ideas in it, but it was really interesting to see what had worked and what hadn't worked on a really specific bit of kit. and lessons learned that other funds can take away
Yep.
when they want to then do the same thing. And I think that is one of the things with these sort of conferences. It's great to have the mix of the big ideas and the future and all that. And then it's really great to actually have some specific lived experience. I tried to do this, or we tried to do this, and this is what worked and this is what did not work. Because then the next time someone else who saw that presentation goes to do the same thing, they'll be in a much better place. And that is that sort of rising tide lifts all boats stuff that I like to see.
So, Telstra Super is a pretty modest-sized fund. If you're working with a bigger fund, trying to streamline payments, trying to do anything innovative with CDR, with open banking, Joshua Coote has tried it, done it, been there, and got the T-shirt. So it's great that he's sharing that story. And I do hope that people like AusPay Plus are paying attention because they want to see these products taken up. And, they've got an early trailblazer sharing the story of some of the challenges they had. So hopefully the banking system and AusPay Plus could fix some of those gaps.
I hope so. And then we were back to the big picture, amazing future, what can we have stuff with Frank Adler from HCL Software, who one of the slides he put up was the idea of a single fund and what the app might look like for someone who was receiving a pension versus someone who was just starting out, using the same data but having a different experience for different people at different life stages. And that did get a bit of a gasp from the audience, I've got to say.
Yeah, I really liked it. So I can imagine one app with a different skin, if you like, depending upon your preferences. But I think the way that Frank presented it was like, depending upon your age. Here's the boomer version. Here's the X version. Here's the millennial version. Like, well, I'm an X, but I like emojis in my app. Can I have some emojis, please?
Well, apparently Gen Xers like emojis. My daughter was telling me last night, she said, do you use emojis in your emails and things at work, Mum? I said, yes. She's like, oh my God. I wasn't sure if we're too old to use emojis.
Or
emojis are cool anymore, or I don't know.
There was a gasp when Frank imagined a future where your superannuation fund could detect that you're pregnant, for example, probably if you're a female member, using unspecified signals Frank can imagine you can acquire as a data collector inside a super fund, and then, makes helpful suggestions that somebody might want to check their insurance or pause the contributions or something like that. So I think that I like the idea of gathering third-party data and having more insight into our member, especially if we want to do some of this really important life stage-based engagement. We all, we had a good laugh and giggle at the kind of where do you draw the line between surveillance and life stage-based engagement?
Well, I think where you draw the line is if you appreciate it, it's life stage-based engagement, and if you don't appreciate it, it's Big Brother and surveillance. But then I guess you can use the big data stuff to decide if someone's going to think that it's a life-based staged engagement or if it's Big Brother. You can probably start with how many cats they have. So
it was an interesting demo of some emerging technology there. In Frank's session, it's called Member Engagement 3.0. And I like the interaction he had with a synthetic contact center agent. Frank made the point that apologies that there's a long wait time that's no longer acceptable. And a lot of member inquiries can be handled by a chatbot, a voice bot. Some basic transactions can all be handled while your representatives are all busy dealing with members with more complex issues.
Yeah, the whole we're experiencing large call volumes, I've got to say it's a bit of a red rag to a bull for me. Like, I know it happens, fully aware that it happens, but seriously, people, no one rings their bank or Telstra or their super fund or whatever unless they absolutely have to. And then when you make them wait 45 minutes to talk to someone, it's just not good.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
I think the last session I attended was the one on operationalizing AML CTR with Ron Mullins from Napier AI. Quite a technical session, talk about down in the weeds. Not an area of my expertise or passion, to be honest, but I think it's just a reminder that given the size of the superannuation system, the ability to get into it and launder large amounts of money is frightening. If you can get a massive contribution into a super fund and then roll it over through a few different super funds out to an SMSF that's got an offshore bank account, that's pretty damaging to the whole system, let alone, all the scams and the frauds and everything else that the folks in financial crime have to deal with. So
yes, that was kind of my take out of it as well.
They acquitted themselves well, but it's complicated.
They did.
For a small brand like mine.
And very important. Like, obviously, it's very important.
Yep.
I'm more a member experience end of this.
Yeah. I like this, I think we've talked about this before, the overall size of the forum. I think there's probably 80 or 90 people in the room. There weren't any spare chairs. It's quite an intimate sized group. You get to meet a lot of people and spend time with them in the lobby, having a coffee or a cup of tea.
Yeah, lunchtime conversations and things. Great.
I probably got another couple of dozen LinkedIn connections of people that I had a good chat with, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, same. I met lots of interesting people and had lots of really good conversations. The last session, the interactive roundtable, which was around building the ideal member experience, there were lots of interesting ideas that came out of that. And in fact, that was where we really did get into the whole discussion around, is it Big Brother or is it a better member experience?
That's right.
Coming back to where we started, it's all in the communication. Yep. It's all about what you say with that data. If you say to someone, our surveillance suggests you're pregnant, would you like to blah, blah, blah? It probably won't go down very well. If you send them an email saying, hi, this is your fund. We often find people about your age and stage of life are thinking about or having babies. Here's some things you might want to consider. That probably does go down well.
Yeah. We had Emma from Australian Super at the table, and it's just a reminder of when you operate at scale like that, whatever Aussie Super has these days, 3 million members or something, trying to segment your members and having not one-to-one, but quite intimate conversations is incredibly difficult. They've got members of every demographic in every part of Australia, in every industry, and trying to find messages that resonate with large groups of people is very challenging. Also, when you have an SLA to do something 99% of the time perfectly, that 1% can be a large number of people for whom it might not go perfectly. You have to be in the operations team, you have to be willing to accept that you can set yourself really high targets, but when things don't go perfectly, large numbers of people get impacted, and you have to learn to deal with that at scale. Yeah,
that was a really interesting discussion, wasn't it, about the trade-offs between, if you want to have 99% of people get X experience, that means you're making the decision that 1% won't, but when you turn that into real member numbers, it's maybe 30,000 people.
Yeah.
So are you prepared to have 30,000 people who don't have a good enough experience? And if the answer is no, then you have to resource up to be able to close that last gap. That's very, very expensive.
Yep.
And then the question is it in best financial interests of all members to close that gap? So I thought that was a really interesting conversation, good sort of thought provoker to finish the conference on.
It was. We have funds from all ends of the spectrum, from the very small, intimate funds right up to the biggest funds in the country in attendance. And they're all facing similar challenges, but the scale can magnify the challenges for some of the bigger ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we all went downstairs for a IPA, not a PA, an IPA, or a vodka soda.
Yeah, that was
which was a lovely way to finish.
It was a lovely way to finish the afternoon, and a great time had by all. So I'm looking forward to a couple of the other IBR sessions coming up later in the year. We've got Engage 2025, which I'm thrilled to say is going to be in Melbourne this August.
Yep, we'll be there.
Good news. Anybody involved in member engagement and communications needs to check that one out. I will put a link to that in the show notes, and just quickly look up the date. It is going to be August 27th in Melbourne. Last year it was in Sydney. It was a really well attended event, but given the number of funds, particularly those who work in engagement and growth, hosting it in Melbourne this year should make it easier for everybody to attend.
Yes, that was a really great conference last year, actually. So looking forward to doing that one again.
We'll see you there.
Yes.
Sarah, thanks so much for taking some time to catch up and give us a recap on day 2.
We'll see you soon.
See you soon. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to That Super Show. We hope today's episode gave you something useful to take back to your team.
If you're thinking we should talk, we'd love to chat. You can book a meeting with either of us via the link in the show notes.
And don't forget to follow the show, share it with a colleague, and drop us a line if there's a topic you want us to tackle.
Catch you next time on That Super Show.